And we are live. Good morning, everyone. This is Paul Romero with the Sell a House Wholesale Real Estate Training number 32 on Monday, October 13th, 2014, here with my business partner, John Leister, to talk to you this morning about, I don't know, a couple things to be careful about, actually, to really take an in-depth look at when you are working with creating a deal and figuring out the value of a house. And with that, I'm just going to say good morning, John. Let you throw your 2 cents worth in here, and we'll get this ball rolling.
Thanks, Paul. Good morning. I'm just realized that like half my face is kind of dark and half my face is kind of white, kind of like the Phantom of the Opera or something. But yeah, I got to get better lighting for these for these hangouts. One of my bulbs in the light fixture up there went out, hence this dark. And then I got the door open, lights coming in. Anyway, good morning. Happy Monday, start of a new week. As I say every week, it's Monday. I love Mondays. It's just the beginning of a whole new week of opportunities, a whole new, I mean, who knows what deals we're going to get this week. I mean, I've got an idea because we've got our leads picked out for the week, the people that we're going to be noodling and the deals that we're going to be going after, and I'm excited to see which ones pan out. And, you know, as I like to say every Monday, if you're not getting up on Monday mornings and you're not enthusiastic about your day and about your week, well, obviously you need to examine and ask yourself why and figure out what you could be doing in your life to be excited about Monday morning. And with that being said, me and Paul had a brief discussion here before we started the hangout. And he was telling me a little bit about an article that he was reading, or a blog rather, about the a couple of steps to finding a hot market, which you know, that'd be kind of an interesting topic to go into today. So I think I'm going to toss it back to Paul after I say welcome to everybody who's here, and let him kick us off on where he wants to go with this today.
Okay, yeah, actually, I wasn't really looking at the wasn't really looking at the hot market one. I was looking more at the where my thoughts went with the appraisal. But let me just bring that other one up real quick. It'll just take 1 second here. It's right, should be right here. Come on, open up. There you go. Let's see here. Wow, there's a lot of stuff in here. Here we go. All right. 4 tips to identify the next hot neighborhood. Not necessarily market, but the hot neighborhood. So this is all about looking into, you know, within your marketplace, what maybe little areas could be the potential next place to come about that are hot markets. And where the heck did it go? What the heck's going on here? Open up, you. That's
Don't you
weird.
love that when you need the internet to work properly? It always happens to me when I'm on the phone with somebody that I'll be trying to pull up an email or some information to relay over the phone, and that's when things decide to kind of take a dump on me.
What I've noticed recently is that sometimes when you have a document of a certain type, like for instance, this particular time I have a Windows Word document or a Microsoft Word document open, and I'm trying to open a second one to look at something else on there, and it won't open it because I already have one open. It's like I have to close the other one to get it to open. It's like, that's just insane. But anyway, I'm just going to go off memory because it's not coming up here. But
that's fine. You have a wonderful memory, and we'll have a great discussion anyhow.
the 4 tips to identify your next hot market basically were, well, I know one was mass transit areas. That was one thing. Properties that are around a mass transit area. Properties where crime is diminishing, or areas, not properties, but areas where a new mass transit system is going, like wherever they're expanding a bus line or they're expanding a rail system or something like that, into where crime is lowering in an area, where you see people are, you got an area where you've got older houses, but you suddenly start seeing, hey, all of a sudden there's two or three places that have just been really nicely spruced up, et cetera, and so on. And then there was one other thing, I forget what it was, but I mean, pretty simple stuff, really. And it's I don't know. I'm too critical about things, but I mean, it's so generic. It's so generic stuff, and it's really just what's going on right now because of the way that everybody's believing that the economy's on the mend and everything's better and the real estate market's hot and all these things. And you know during the crash, all these neighborhoods were bad and run down, and you can go into any old neighborhood that was run down, and you can easily find two or three houses that have been all fixed up and look really, really nice in just about any neighborhood, in any city, and even in the worst of neighborhoods. Crime's going down pretty much everywhere, So I mean, it's just kind of, I don't know. I get a little picky about this stuff, but it's just like, okay, there's a bunch of BS that really says nothing. You know what I mean?
I do agree with you, but can I add a thought in here real quick?
Yeah. I flipped it over to you.
Oh, excellent. Are you sure? Because it looks like the white circle, the white square is around your name. I don't know if that. Oh, you did toss it over to me. I apologize. Okay, I get what Paul's saying. A lot of these articles that you're going to read on blogs, on the internet, or you get when you sign up for like a real estate newsletter, it's just a lot of generic crap, a lot of space filler. But there was a couple key things in there, Paul, that I took slightly different than you did. Like one of the things out of the things that said how to identify a hot neighborhood is areas of mass transit. Well, I know in the Phoenix market right now, they're building a light rail system. They finished a section of it a number of years ago, and they're completing another about 6-mile run. I also know that because of the location of a property that one of our investors purchased, and we maintain the property for them and manage it for them, receive some information from the city about community redevelopment programs and specifically increased police presence in the area to reduce crime and raise real estate values. And I've also, in this particular part of town, watched a lot of new strip malls being put in anticipation of this light rail system. Okay? The reason I say I took this a little, yes, that article kind of presented the information in a generic way, but let's dig deeper. There's something underlying that. Everything looks rosy right now. A lot of people, and I am of the mindset that they wrongfully believe that the economy's on the mend. It's on the mend in the respect that I just had my arm blown off in the battlefield. I'm not going to regrow my arm. They're just going to put a tourniquet right here to stop the bleeding, okay? That's all they did. They temporarily stopped the bleeding. But there's a reason why they're dumping money into mass transit, and they're dumping way too much money, in my opinion, to build strip malls, because we all know, well, we don't all know this, but we should. Retail business, brick and mortar business, is going the way of the buffalo. I'm not even going to a mall this year to go Christmas shopping. I'm going to Amazon.com so I don't have to deal with crowds and, wasting my time. I can cruise the internet. But that's the trend, people. They're just doing this to create jobs. But I've noticed one other thing about retail space that's opening up in this area. It's all food. It's all food and bars, because retail space is the way of the buffalo. It's an extinct thing. But it is important to notice what neighborhoods they're targeting with mass transit, that they're targeting with retail. And another thing that's blowing up like crazy is all these apartment complexes that are popping up all over town. Now, the reason I bring this up is because everybody's seeing building going on again, and it's creating jobs, and a lot of contractors are getting work like crazy right now. I know, I'm a contractor, because of all this going on. I don't falsely believe that this is a sign that the economy is improving. Actually, I look at it as a sign of the exact opposite. They're centralizing neighborhoods, okay? They're building food and retail close to where they're building apartments and mass transit, so that when the economy tanks again, people can walk and get there on foot, because when we have even less discretionary income because of inflation and inflated gas prices, we'll be able to jump on mass transit and go on down and get ourselves something to eat. So I kind of took that article as those are interesting things to pull out. Is where are they building the mass transit? Where is all the food retail going? And where are they trying to increase police presence? And when government money is actually getting behind improving certain neighborhoods, they happen to coincide, at least in the case of Phoenix, in neighborhoods where they're planning mass transit. I think, in my opinion, it's not because the economy is good, but because they're looking at what's going to happen in the near future because of the economy going south again, and people are still going to need to eat and get around places.
Well, that's exactly. I mean, yeah. You look at like you say, you look at the commercial real estate, and what you see that's doing well is commercial residential, of course, which is apartment massive, massive residency. Multiple people on one parcel type of a situation. That is doing very well. You look at, like John says, the strip malls and things like that. Even potentially a bigger mall, because I know the location that John's talking about, and there is a large mall right there as well too. But yeah, that's that whole little general vicinity right there is being developed into a major hub of activity. But if you look around the other areas, you'll see these little strip malls popping up in neighborhoods, where maybe there used to be just or maybe there was a strip mall there, but it went vacant for a while type of thing. And you see these places popping up, and like John says, what you see, they're setting these things up, they're building these things to, for mom and pop organizations, for the people within the neighborhoods to be able to get to, although we're not seeing mom and pop shops opening up. What we're seeing is Chick-fil-A's and Starbucks and Chipotle's. And you don't think that these corporate organizations have spent millions of dollars vetting these areas to see where the future growth is? Anytime you see these kinds of opportunities popping up, this is a growth area. This is where you could find the next potential hot market, et cetera, and so on. And you're always going to see this, like John says, popping up in and around the expansion of a mass transit, because hey, those people know that very not too far down the road in the future, nobody's going to be able to afford gasoline in their car, so they're going to be hopping on the mass transit, and they're going to want all their stores to be accessible to the people who can't afford to put gas in their car, but they're still going to go out and spend their money because they don't know any better on high-priced food and what was the other thing you said? There's a lot of food and what?
Food, I noticed, and like bars and
yeah, food and drink. Yeah, exactly, food and drink. That's what I meant. Because you know what? We're still social creatures, even though we're not going to be able to get out and do things and drive and go do the things that we want to do, and even though we're going to stay at home and we're going to shop on Amazon because we don't like the crowds and all the hassle, we still have to interact with human beings. And what's the two ways to do that? Food and drink, right? Food and drink and certain events. So I mean, that's where, I mean, what you don't see doing well out there in the commercial arena is warehouses, big manufacturing facilities. What was the other thing I was thinking of?
Bookstores, retail stores.
Yeah, retail. That was the other one. Yeah, big retail. All that kind of stuff. You don't see a lot of that stuff popping up these days. What you see is, like John says, you see the little corner stops that are in specific neighborhoods that are, actually from the well-to-do down. I mean, the better and more affluent these neighborhoods are, the hotter these little corner markets, these little corner stores are, because obviously these are the people that have the money to be able to go out there every weekend and spend their money drinking and eating and having fun and talking with their friends and hanging out and basically wasting their lives. But but I mean that's where the target is going. Like John says, all centralized and getting together. Um, which is interesting because that kind of leads me to the second subject that I pulled out of these articles, which was all about. Uh, I wanted to say these two articles. They were written on a. I don't know if I mentioned the name of it or not, but they were written on a very popular real estate website, and they're written by an award-winning journalist specializing in personal finance, investing, real estate, and entrepreneurship. So.
I'm sorry.
I mean, yeah, this is, okay, where's this person getting their information from that we're listening to in the first place? So, the next one was all about six things preventing you from selling it, from six things preventing your house from selling, right? Number one, your price too high. Number two, no one knows it's for sale. They say, it's priced too high. They're saying no one knows it's for sale because all you've done is stick a for sale sign in the front yard. They're talking about how it's a lot of online, and that you need to be either online with your advertisement or in the MLS. The house has glaring issues, like like the roof is falling apart or something along those lines. The house doesn't show well. Which basically they're talking about, making sure that your house has nothing to prevent it from people falling in love with it. Open up the blinds and let the light in. Fixing stupid things like fixing a little sticky drawer. Just a bunch of BS. Buyers can't. That you have too much of your own personal stuff within the house. This is another thing, that buyers can't picture themselves in the house because they still see you there. And the curb appeal, that you've neglected to do anything to the outside of your house, which is going to prevent somebody from pulling up to it and driving away before they even see the inside. And then I was reading some comments after this article, and there was one. They started getting into evaluating properties and appraisals and things like that. And like there was this one that said, hey, I tried to get my appraised value increased because I pointed out that I have 5 acres when nobody else around here does, and they wouldn't increase the value of my home based on that matter. And a lot of people don't know this, and this is a tip for you guys who are coming on board with property noodlers, and or who are wholesalers yourself out there, and any investors, whatever. In case you didn't know this, the real estate appraisal system has been, I'm going to say, broken. They're going to say reworked or whatever, improved, but really it's been destroyed by them taking the human element out of it and making it more of a mechanical system, which is kind of more of a connect the dots thing. And by doing so, what they've really done is they've taken away a lot of the value which we are accustomed to and used to and normally would apply to all of the extra features, the specialness of a house, which would appeal to an owner-occupant buyer. And they've basically set up pre-established valuations for all this stuff now. So it's you either have it and it's this value, or it's good and you get that much extra, or it's bad and you get that much taken off. Plain and simple, cut and dry, bottom line, that's all there is to it. And there is no variation. There is no appraiser going in there and saying, okay, well, they have a kitchen, check, that's good. Is it good or bad? Well, it's good, but this one is like ultimately fantastically good, belongs in a mansion on, wherever. It shouldn't be in this. I mean, not that it shouldn't be in this house, but I mean, it's just amazing kitchen. Really should add some extra value to this house, but I'm limited to the fact that it's a good kitchen, and I can only add $4,000 worth of value for the fact that it's a good kitchen. So that's kind of where they've broken the appraisal system. And so if you're looking at appraisals and people are quoting the fact, oh, well, I got an appraisal and it's worth this much, and all of those things, you have to really be careful now, because the appraisal system is really what they did by taking all of this out and generically putting all this together. I'm going to read you the reply that I was going to post this morning. I haven't got around to it. I still post it, but basically I wrote this: comps will never again make sense unless you live in a cookie-cutter neighborhood, because they have tampered with the system through legislation passed earlier this year. Just like everything else that's being manipulated to fool the masses believing falsities like unemployment rate. They have taken the human element out of the evaluation process, thereby eliminating added value from the things that matter to a regular owner-occupant buyer. This was done in an effort to simplify national and long-distance purchases for the investor buyer, although that is not the reason they would tell you. That's why they don't add on for your acreage or any other special features, because it doesn't fit into the new mechanical formula, through which, by the way, they have already given the maximum allowable credit for lot size. Whether you have 1 acre or 10 acre, you only get a specific value added, period. Don't quote me on the exacts on this. I'm just giving you randomly generated examples of the base concept of this new system that it's designed around. For instance, you might be thinking that your swimming pool adds like $20,000 or $30,000 to the value, but no. According to the formula, it's only worth, say, $10,000, and that's all you get. One of the reasons that's actually kind of a fact is the fact that a lot of investors don't like the added liabilities associated to a swimming pool, and therefore the added appraised value now has been severely diminished. Just another example of money and power using the government to aid in manipulating the masses for the purpose of lining pockets. And by the way, this legislation came from a political leader who also happens to be a role player and part of one of the nation's largest appraisal organizations. Imagine that. Quite frankly, as an investor buyer, I give absolutely no credence to an appraisal or even the comped value that I would receive from most real estate agents, who also follow a generic formula and rarely take the time to compare apples to apples. Now, if you're an agent, hey, I apologize, because there are some good ones out there, and if this is not you, then you're not going to be offended. And if this is you, well, then. But I mean, that's the response that I was going to put out there, that I'm going to put out there. But that's. So you got to be careful. I mean, there's appraising, looking at the comps and the values of a property in today's world. You really have to look at apples to apples more than ever before. John, back to you.
Absolutely, I agree. And with the appraisal system, it can work both ways, meaning you don't get the value to your property when you really should, because I know I've had conversations with investors who've done a rehab. These guys are experts at comping. These guys know what they're looking at. These guys know where people are going to buy. And then they've got these properties. Mm-hmm. They do the work. They put it on the market, and they get the buyer. Buyer goes. He's an approved buyer, but comes time to close, and guess what? The bank won't lend him the money because the appraisal's lower than what this buyer is willing to pay, because it doesn't fit in to their model. Hence, right now, let's say you have a 2,000 square foot house with that gorgeous kitchen in a neighborhood where the average house is 1,300 square feet. You probably could get and if it's a nice neighborhood, you could probably get a buyer willing to pay more for the 2,000 square feet, but it won't appraise for the equivalent square footage price, because they're looking at an average of what's going on in the neighborhood, not based on what buyers are going to buy and pay, but based on just numbers on paper. But it can also overinflate the expectations of sellers in an area of town where they'll give you an appraisal. Just looked at a property. Guy said appraised value $310,000. Wholesale price $295. Listen, buddy. You're
Sorry.
comparing a home. This is in an area where you've got a street, a major street, 19th Avenue. West of 19th Avenue, you have homes that are going for maybe 70 to $95 a square foot. East of 19th Avenue, you have fucking mansions going for almost 200 square feet. Not the same neighborhood. Yeah, they're only a
Half mile.
stone's throw away, but not comparable. In fact, the guy with this property I'm talking about, with his appraisal at 310, property ain't worth more than, nobody would pay more than 120, 150 on the outside for this property. So it also overinflates the expectations of sellers, and we deal with this all the time because it doesn't take into account barriers.
Mm-hmm.
And in a market like Phoenix, and I'm sure we're not unique, east and west of a particular cross street, north or south of a particular intersection makes a huge difference in value, and the appraisals don't take those barriers into consideration. And, when you're trying to give a fair offer to a seller and they come up with, well, you're out of line because my appraisal came in at this, it's very difficult to educate that person about the reality because they want what they feel is top dollar for a property. And so,
because they got their information from a quote professional. That's why.
Professional expert. And as Paul did point out, it's oh God, I can't think of his name. His father is the governor of New York. In fact, his son, who helped write the legislation, and his father, a senator from New York, pushed it through, happens to own one of the largest and one of the now 5 appraisal agencies that are actually allowed to appraise your homes. Part of a national, generalized, federally sanctioned appraisal system we now have. And that's where you've got to really pull back the veil and look at what's happening in the world today around you. Where are you getting your information? Who's writing legislation, for crying out loud?
Mm-hmm.
People with money who are interested in more of it and have the means and the ability to manipulate the system to their side of the table, so to speak. I think that's kind of an interesting thing to point out, that's absolutely 100% true, is that the system was wrote by one of the people that own one of the only 5 accredited or sanctioned, I think that's the word I'm looking for, companies that manage appraisals on a national level. One of the only 5 companies that a bank lending money will look at. Yeah, so with that being said,
how many small companies, how many little mom and pop appraisal shops do you think that whole legislation put right out of business?
Intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
And these guys actually are these guys aren't a national business. They're local, and they know the market, and they understand what a property will actually sell for. And as Paul said, it's very interesting and very important that even as a wholesaler, especially if you're into the flipping side of things, that you understand these things, that you understand what's going on. You've got to understand the laws and the legislation that's coming through, because it will affect how business is done.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what I was saying about the agents, they follow a generic system as well when it comes to giving comps for a property. And what they'll do is basically they'll do a half-mile radius around this property, and then they'll look at similar square footage, and then they'll take the price per square foot and multiply it by the price per square foot of the house you have, and boom, that's what your house is worth. They don't take into a lot of consideration. And then a half-mile radius, as John said, and then if there's not enough properties within a half a mile, they'll expand it out to a mile. And then if there's still not enough, a mile and a half and 2 miles, or however far they have to go to get, 3, 4, 5, 6, however many properties that they determine is necessary of the same square footage, similar square footage, And that's really what it all kind of comes down to. And that's what you're going to get your comps off of, is similar to that. And like John says, a stone's throw away, a neighborhood can change. You get a mile and a half, 2 miles away, you can be in a whole nother world. You could be comparing your $300,000 house to the ghetto, or you could be vice versa. You could be you're comparing your ghetto to the $300,000 house, which is either going to increase, inflate or deflate the true value of the property. You really got to look and hone in on neighborhoods. Start out within subdivisions even. So when it comes to comping properties, it's not as easy as it used to be before. You used to be able to do that kind of thing, but you can't do it anymore. So you have to be really careful when it comes to comping properties and determining value of properties and understanding what what your buyers are going to be willing to pay for that property, so that you can make a proper offer to the seller that's going to make sense, that's going to work, that's going to both do the best that it can do for the seller and provide an opportunity and a deal to your buyer. That's what your job is when it comes to comping properties, is doing that kind of getting that kind of information. So with that, I'm gonna put this out there that hey, we can help you comp your properties, show you the right way to do it. At propertynoodlers@gmail.com is where you want to send us an email to join our team. Come on board with the Property Noodlers and get out there and land yourself a deal right away. Change your life, move on, because the basic concept that I never did throw out there today is the fact that, the world is changing, and your best interest is not necessarily at the forefront of that change. All right, that's something for you to think about. Who you're listening to, the information that you're gathering, where it's coming from, very important. Understand, figure it out. Don't just be a sheep who's being led to the slaughter like everybody else and believe everything that you hear. Figure it out for yourself. Get real information. Make your own decisions. That's all I got to say. I'm going to let John close this thing out today.
Yeah, you know what? I think that Paul hit it on the head there. Be open to change, the changes that are currently taking place. We talked about some of that with centralization and what's going on with retail and what's happening in certain neighborhoods early on. Is that change is happening. Don't be fooled. Don't buy into bullcrap. And with that being said, you should say this prayer every day. O universe, I ask not for more riches, but for more wisdom, with which to make better use of the riches given to me at birth through the power to control and direct my own mind to whatever ends I may desire. All right? See you guys Wednesday. Go out there, kick freaking ass this week.